I'm not building walls, I'm building bridges to greatness. Demanding excellence, no time for complacence. Act right or act out, the choice is always clear. My presence is my power, my standards draw the line here. Elevation, protocol, rising above the chaos, taking control. My values not negotiable, my worth is my law. Surrounding myself with excellence, that's what I saw. I'm not building walls, I'm building bridges to greatness. Demanding excellence, no time for complacence. Act right or act out, the choice is always clear. My presence is my power, my standards draw the line here. This is the elevation, protocol, rising above the chaos, taking control. My values not negotiable, my worth is my law. Surrounding myself with excellence, that's what I saw. This is the elevation, protocol, rising above the chaos, taking control. My values not negotiable, my worth is my law. Surrounding myself with excellence, that's what I saw. I'm not building walls, I'm building bridges to greatness. Demanding excellence, no time for complacence. Act right or act out, the choice is always clear. My presence is my power, my standards draw the line here. I'm not building walls, I'm building bridges to greatness. Demanding excellence, no time for complacence. Act right or act out, the choice is always clear. My presence is my power, my standards draw the line here. Bridges to greatness, demanding excellence, no time for complacence. Act right or act out, the choice is always clear. My presence is my power, my standards draw the line here. I'm not building walls, I'm building bridges to greatness. Demanding excellence, no time for complacence. Act right or act out, the choice is always clear. My presence is my power, my standards draw the line here. I'm not building walls, I'm building bridges to greatness. Demanding excellence, no time for complacence. Act right or act out, the choice is always clear. My presence is my power, my standards draw the line here. My standards draw the line here. My standards draw the line here. I'm not building walls.
How you doing, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome to This and That. I'm your host, Xander, where we're talking about this, that, and everything in between. Um, we're going to actually be covering some stuff, some information about Spain's response to the United States from last week's discussions. I told you guys I was getting some more detailed information about it, so we're going to be covering that today. Um, we're actually almost on time, about 10 minutes, 15 minutes behind schedule as projected. But, while we go live every night of the week, we Do not let the sun rise without going live, but we don't always start on time. So we ask you guys to like and subscribe and always hit those notification buttons and actually potentially start looking into those the membership for the extra detailed information that we give you guys on a regular basis. Now, so far, what we have as updates is that, well, they're still bombing the fuck out of everything. Uh, they're bombing so much stuff. We're shooting our own planes down. They're haven't discussed anything about DHS and gotten a resolution. So TSA still not getting paid, and they're halfway through April. Uh, tax season's almost up. It's next week, Wednesday. That is it. So if you don't get it done by the end of this week, next week you're risking walking yourselves right into penalties for whatever taxation that you do file. Um, we have TikTok's running stable. Oracle stocks are showing the results of the millions and millions of TikTok users that are operating in the United States. So we kind of got a steady stream of things going that we've been following. But while we're here 7 nights a week, we covered plenty of different topics from plenty of different angles. Typically, we start with Sundays, which is questions and comments from the fans. As you've seen, we had a lot of people commenting from yesterday's show on Sunday night from the Twitch standpoint. We also have Twitter X on here, so special shout out to those guys. Um, and then Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday is about business and politics, where Mondays we talk about how politics negatively impact your ability to make, save, and invest money, and what's going on between Spain and the United States could impact you if you were either living there or investing there, holding your money there, whatever the case may be. So we were going to be covering that today. As I said earlier, then we have Tuesdays where we talk about ways to make, save, and invest money, budget money, you know, startup businesses, stuff to that effect. And I believe tomorrow we're going to be talking about how Bitcoin perceivably crashed because as it peaked for the first time in the history of Bitcoin at almost $120,000, it has gone all the way back down to approximately $60,000. So we're going to be talking about Bitcoin tomorrow. And then we are going to be talking about Madrid on Wednesday because on Wednesdays we talk about different countries around the world that you can live and invest in. Um, Potentially cheaper than the country that you're living in. So we're going to be discussing that, covering the spread on that. And then after that, we're going to be on Thursday, Friday, Saturday, talking about your personal development, self improvement, relationship topics, negotiations. Um, we're going to be talking about building your brand, and then discussing promotions, raises, retirements, and even severance packages. We cover a lot of things for you guys to basically give you guys first the change in your professional life so that you can try to earn money in a more effective fashion where you're either making more money for the work that you're doing or doing less work for the money that you're making, which frees up a lot more time for your personal life decisions because your personal life decisions actually impacts your income. And that's what not a lot of people think about. The everything you do um, or decide to do typically has some type of financial cost outside of effort and time cost. And those decisions leads to the fundamental basis of your standard of living because your standard of living is identified personally by most people. Your basic utilities, rent, light, gas, car insurance, phone bills, stuff to that effect, but other personal choices, relationships, dating, um, upgrading your cell phone to the latest one, designer clothes, trips around the world, the luxuries in life, extra memberships, all of those things are all part of your standard of living decisions. And the cost to control that type of living is coming out of the income. And that typically, when you don't make enough, you put more pressure on your employer for raises, extra hours, promotions. And when they don't give you that, it builds resentment between you and your employer because you can't cover the standard of living that you want with the income that you have. And if you're a self-employed individual where you work for yourself, you typically offset the expectations of your financial needs onto your customer by raising prices, which then leads you away from a steady income stream to an unstable income stream where some people can still afford the higher prices, but a lot of people cannot. And that puts you in a compromising position. So the dynamic there is that if we change the way we make decisions, which lowers the cost of your standard of living, then you have more money to go around for the same income that you have. While we still work on bringing up your income capabilities, we're giving you the ability to redirect your capital to other things that invest in your future, as opposed to having lifestyle creep, where the more money you make, the more money you spend, right? So, since today we're going to be kind of tiptoeing into what's going on with the current Iranian war and the collateral damage of that, if I ask you a simple question, what if NATO, a key ally of NATO, a nation that's bound to the United States by decades of military cooperation, suddenly says no in the middle of a major crisis, such as the one we've got now? It's a geopolitical thought experiment that could shake the very foundations of a long-standing alliance. So imagine this: 2026, the US on the brink of massive conflict with Iran turns to its long term partners for support, specifically for access, strategic bases um, that has used for what, 70 years now? That's pretty much what we've been using those bases for 70 years now. Now, for Madrid, though, the answer is going to be a stunning and unequivocal no. Uh, this isn't a quiet disagreement, it's a public rebuke of American foreign policy. So let's explore the hypothetical scenario where Spain publicly defies the United States, risking a major diplomatic crisis and showing why the White House might not be able to use its own bases to project that power. So let's set a scene. The final days of February 2026 mark the dangerous turning point. A long simmering shadow war between Iran, Israel, and the United States explodes into open chaos. Um, February 28th, the hypothetical coordinated US Israeli air offense strikes deep into Iranian territory. And in this scenario, reports flood the news wires that Iran's supreme leader, Ali Khamenei, is specifically eliminated. For a fictional White House, this is the high risk, high reward decapitation of the Iranian regime, designed to sow chaos and show force of a change. But such a bold move would require an immediate and overwhelming follow up, right? Pentagon war planners would have everything mapped out. Fleets would be in motion, and aircraft would need to scramble, for projecting power into the Middle East. No location in East Europe is more critical than Spain. And the special shout out to Charles. What up, brother? It's good to see you again. Now, the naval stations at Rota, guarding the Strait of Gibraltar, that's a pretty weird strait, and the air base in Moron de la Frontera, that's going to be near Savelli. They have been uh, eclipsed of the American military logistics plans in that region for generations. That is specifically the two locations, the Gibraltar, I'm saying that wrong, and the Moron de la Fronta. Those two locations, that's what they've been doing for a long period of time. Oh, yeah, he says everybody get the likes and then everybody mash the reaction buttons, because it'll show the algorithm that people actually really need to know this information. Now, in what's going on, there's going to be this forward operation where they're going to be utilizing these bases from which the U.S. has launched, supplied, and supported missions across Africa and the Middle East. And in the scenario that we're dealing with right now, a request from Washington to Madrid would be seen as a formality. Like, hey, let me use these bases because I mean, we use them anyway, right? And after all, what is an alliance for? Well, the expectation would be simple: grant immediate, unrestricted access for all operations related to the Iran conflict, refueling tankers, uh, strike aircrafts, surveillance drones. The full might of the American military machine is ready to flow through its Spanish artery. But the expected yes never came. Instead, a political earthquake emanates from the Moncloa Palace in Madrid, where the government of Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez doesn't just hesitate or ask for clarification, it refuses. Now, the refusal is absolute, covering not just direct combat missions, but all logistical support. For the first time in the long history of the U.S. Spanish defense relationship, the gates of Rota and Moron are effectively closed to the American military for a major conflict. Now, the shock in Washington would be palpable. The logistical plan, so carefully crafted, are thrown into chaos. A critical artery has been severed, not by an enemy, but by a friend. Typically, we've experienced the most devastating blows from our most closest allies. People don't pay attention to that. But this move is so unexpected that for a few hours, officials in the Pentagon and State Department might wonder if it was all a misunderstanding. But it's not. It's a complete and clear declaration. So, in this hypothetical chain of events, the Spanish government wouldn't hide its decisions. It would make it a case that is directly designed and notified to its people and the world that in this series of coordinated public statements, Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez, flanked by his top ministers, would lay out a position of unambiguous defiance. Now, the phrase echoing from Madrid would be a simple one, deeply rooted in recent Spanish history. No a la Garua, no to war. Prime Minister Sanchez is in a televised national address that would be resulting from this declaration. He'd likely condemn Iran's own aggressive actions, but describe the U.S. Israeli strikes as reckless and illegal. A lot of people have agreed. He said the devil has no friends. Well, I mean, what was it like 37 or 35 felonies? Well, down the stream. And he still made it to the top. He got what, 5 or 6 felonies more than P Diddy, and didn't do one day on the inside. So he got a lot of friends. They're just not where he wanted them to be. um, but there's also an act of playing Russian roulette with the lives of millions of people, which is what is being perceived by the actions of the United States and Israeli strikes, from the perspective of Spain, where he would draw a direct line from his government stance on other global conflicts, framing this as a consistent policy of rejecting unilateral military actions that violate international law, which I would assume that NATO was built to put a stop to, right? Now, this isn't about being anti American, he'd argue, but about being pro international law, which is everybody in agreement that certain things should not happen. Now, when one person steps up and says, I'm going to do it anyway, you can't really ask everybody else in the class to back you up on that. He said bullies. Well, that's the word that spells the red, white, and blue, right? There are moments, Sanchez might declare, when a nation must stand on principle, even when it is difficult. Spain would not be a platform for a war that we believe is a catastrophic mistake. And this is what he would declare. We will not be a vassal. That's what he continues to say. Well, he also says, we will be a sovereign partner committed to peace, which kind of sounds like Switzerland. Hey, y'all can do whatever y'all want to do, but I am not a part of that. I agree. Now, the message would be hammered home by his cabinet. So, Defense Minister uh, Margarita Robles, speaking to the press, would be clinically precise. The bilateral agreements governing the American use of Spanish bases, she explained, are contingent upon their use being within the framework of international law, and a unilateral strike launched without a UN mandate or a clear NATO consensus would not meet that criteria, meaning that all of the parties of NATO must agree to the strike. Otherwise, Spain is not going to be a part of it. So America cannot have a direct one-on-one conflict with Iran and then ask for other people to jump in. That's the code of the streets, isn't it? That's the code of the streets. We grew up on that back in the 90s, right? 80s and 90s. You can't say, "Oh, I'm going to go beat up so and so. Y'all come help me." We out there street fight. It's supposed to be one-on-one, right? You got beef with them, hootie hoot. You go over there. We'll watch. You go whoop his ass or get your ass whooped, whichever one, right? We're spectators. You know, just because you got a far distance to travel, don't mean that you got to come and rest and rejuvenate yourself at my house before you go next door and go fuck something up over there. Because what happens if they decide to retaliate by taking out my house so that you don't get closer to me? He didn't get that memo. He, that's what I'm trying to say. It's like it does kind of make sense because if NATO was built under the expectation that it was supposed to be global discussions, global agreements, one party out of NATO cannot overrule the entire sense of NATO because that undermines the structure of NATO, right? Now, the weird part about this interaction, what's up, brother? The interaction here is pretty straightforward, and they didn't like what was going on. Now, Foreign Minister Manuel Alvarez would take a wider European view, calling on Europe to find its own voice of balance and moderation. Because we did hear that Britain had no problem, like, yeah, come on over, use everything that we got, right? Now, even the deputy prime minister and other cabinet members would step forward to reinforce the message, and this would be a united front. And I think we heard Donald Trump talking about on one of the press conferences how he reached out to NATO for support on these actions and nobody budged. Well, Spain would be asserting its sovereignty, its refusal to be a cog in a military machine whose mission it did not support. Now, the immediate consequences would be a logistical nightmare for the U.S. Air Forces because KC 135 tankers and C 17 transport planes, originally scheduled to fly through Spain, would be hastily rerouted, adding hours to a flight time and millions to fuel the cost. Now, the message from Madrid is going to be sent not just in words, but in action. So, to understand Spain's shocking hypothetical defiance, you have to dig into the past. The United States Spain military relationship was never built on shared values, but on the cold, hard currency of geopolitical convenience. Relationships of convenience only last until they're no longer convenient. The story began in 1953 with the Pact of Madrid. Spain, ruled by the dictator Francisco Franco, was an international parish. The United States locked in the Cold War, needed strategic geography more than it needed democratic allies in Southern Europe. President Eisenhower administration made a deal in exchange for the rights to build and operate the very bases at the center of this crisis at Rota and Moron, also Terrion and Zaragoza. The Franco regime received economic aid and international legitimacy. It was a purely transactional relationship. The US got its unsinkable aircraft carrier on the Mediterranean, and Franco got a lifeline. This transactional nature defined the relationship of decades. When Spain transitioned to democracy and prepped to join NATO in 1982, the alliance was a tough sell. The Spanish left was deeply skeptical, viewing it as a vehicle for American dominance. And this led to a divisive national referendum in 1986. He said, another devil. Well, we've got a lot of people in politics that make deals with the wrong side of morality in order to get to where they're getting in the political um, structure, the infrastructure. So I can say that they're going to ruffle a lot of feathers and they're probably going to piss off a lot of people, but they accomplish most of the things that they want to accomplish, which is why they get so far up the authoritative ladder. So, in this dynamic, the socialist government campaigned for a yes vote, but only by attaching three crucial conditions. Now, Spain would not join NATO's integrated military command. It would ban nuclear weapons from its soil, and it would work to reduce the U.S. military presence. Now, the yes vote won, but the message was clear that Spanish membership in NATO was conditional. Let's fast forward to 2003. The memory of the US led invasion of Iraq is burned into the Spanish political consciousness. Then Prime Minister Jose Maria and Zanar stood with George W. Bush, supporting the war against the will of over 90% of the Spanish population. And the streets of Madrid filled with millions of protesters. And the political fallout was immense. Michael says, some people see Trump as a devil, others see him as a great white hope. Well, I can't really say that he's the great white hope because he's not making white decisions. uh, Charles says, they all lose their souls in the end. Well, if you if you're willing to do whatever it takes to get certain things, then the collateral damage could be your virtue, your inner morality, your ethical perspectives, because ultimately you're not going to be able to cross the correct path lines without shaking down a few of your previous lines in the sand. You're if lives must be lost in order for you to get what you want, you're gonna have to take down your moral position of not taking lives. So it's kind of going to be one of those situations where you got to give something to get something. The law of alchemy. He says, Jesse says that he's the great white hope. I mean, Jesse could say that he's a great white hope, but Again, he, I'm not gonna be able to sign on him being the great white hope. He's making some non-white decisions. You know, who's hoping for him? Because he's not the savior of poor people. What's great about him? He's really old. That's great. He still has all of his motor skills. That's great too. He's a billionaire. I mean, that's great for him, but for the rest of us, it's like share. Uh, like no doubt, bro. There's 385 million people in America. He could donate $1 million to every citizen in America and still be a multi-billionaire. And if he did, only 30% of the people that he donated to would no longer be poor. Isn't that wild? And if he did that, $385 million that he would be throwing away. Well, no, if he donated $1 million of over 300 million people, that'd be 3.8 billion. But then he'd be kind of broke, but he would still be a multi-billionaire. But he just wouldn't be like Elon Musk multi-billionaire. But like only 30% of us wouldn't be broke. Everybody else would just splurge it all away. Brand new Bentleys, brand new Hellcats, $500,000 cars. And if it's taxed income, because you got gift tax, it fuck around and have to pay 50% of it to the US government. So instead of getting 1 million, we'd only really be getting 500,000. And everybody be spending $1 million worth of money knowing that they got to get an IRS $500,000. Then it'd be seized the next year. So the year after that happened, everybody be broke. Yeah, he wouldn't do it in reality, but I'm just saying hypothetically. He got that kind of money that he could really give each person in America $1 million and still not be broke. Right? Now, Aznar's government was defeated in the next election after they helped George and what was it? Uh, helped them with that. Yeah, George W. Bush helped them with the Iraq thing in 2003. So there was a direct public uh, reputation of his stance. Like everybody, nobody really wanted this, and for an entire generation of Spanish politicians, including Pedro Sanchez, the lesson was learned. Never again will Spanish government defy its people and follow the U.S. into a controversial war. A hypothetical no a la guerra, meaning no war. That is what they stood on. Are you asking me junior or senior? Michael, you have been here for what, 15 or 16 presidents? You don't know which Bush was in office in 2003? George Bush was in office in 2003. Was it the old one or the young one? Which one do you think it was, Michael? Which one do you think it was? It was right around the time Bill Clinton was out there with Monica Lewinsky. Which one do you think it was, Michael? Come on now. You were still alive at this point. So their stance on no war, exact. So the old Bush. So you already know what's going on. Their stance of no war in 2026 would be the settling of a score from 2003, where their streets were torn asunder because they helped America with the 2003 attack on Iraq. So if Washington believes Spain's initial refusal was its final move, they would have gravely miscalculated the situation. In the scenario, Madrid isn't finished as US military planners work around the clock, rerouting flights. They sooner discover that Spain's defiance has expanded. This is no longer just about the bases, this is about the skies itself. By March 30th, and this is about what, 10 days ago, 2026, the order comes down from the Spanish Ministry of Defense. Spain is closing its airspace to all U.S. military flights involving in the Iran conflict. Now, this is a dramatic escalation. Denying base access is one thing, but closing a country's entire airspace to an ally is a nearly unprecedented move within NATO. It's a hard border in the sky. The strategic implications would be immediate and severe. Spanish's position is the most direct flight path from the US and Western Europe to the Middle East. Closing this aerial space highway forces the United States military into costly and time consuming detours. Every rerouted flight means more time in the air, more mid air refueling, increased refuel consumption, and greater wear and tear on aircrafts and the crews. Defense Minister uh, Magarta Robles would once again be the face of this hardline policy. Uh, Magarta is a female political position, so she is now in terrorist press conferences where she confirmed the restrictions are absolute, applying to all war-related actions. The only expectations would be for proven medical or humanitarian emergencies. That's the only thing that they're going to allow. A U.S. bomber, a surveillance drone, a transport plane carrying munitions, none of those are going to be welcome. Now, this transforms Spain's position from passive non cooperation to active obstruction. It's a deliberate act to complicate the American war effort, signaling that Spain is willing to absorb the political heat. And the message is no longer just, we will not help. The message is now, you will not pass for this bullshit. You shall not pass. They put the Ganondorf on that ass. He said, we'll create a base in the Middle East, which will shorten flight time. I mean, they're going to create something somewhere. Britain said that you can fly to Britain long as you ain't crossing over Spanish airspace to get the direct path to Britain, you're good. That's going to be a lot of effort because imagine you're going to have to sail a ship as far out as possible, and then you have to sail another ship as far out as that ship with fuel to refuel that ship to sail that ship even further so that all the planes on that ship can launch from that ship so that that ship can now go to war. It's a lot of effort. So once they get another base set up that's not Spain, or several bases set up that's not Spain, you understand that the relationship between Spain and US is going to change because US was cutting checks to Spain to use Spanish bases. They're no longer using Spanish bases. America's no longer renting that property. So the capital that they were getting from Spain, or that Spain was getting from the United States, that's going to change coming soon. Those peace talks that they used to have, where the subsidization of Spanish income from United States revenue, that's gonna by the time this Iranian war settles down, that's all going to change. So, in our hypothetical scenario, let's assume that Donald Trump is back in the White House, and the reaction while he's twiddling his sharpie would likely be furious. A leader whose foreign policy is defined by an American first worldview would see Spain's actions as a personal and national betrayal, which he definitely did declare. In a series of fury, social media posts, and press briefings, he would unleash a torrent of criticisms, such as we have a situation where we spend billions on beautiful bases in Spain. You can imagine him declaring, and now, when we really need them, they tell us no. It's a disgrace. Y'all remember this, right? He would cast the refusal as a freeloader's betrayal, immediately connecting it to his long-standing grievance with NATO allies over defense spending. Spain is one of the worst offenders. It's something that you would hear him say. They pay a tiny fraction of what they should. And I've been telling them for years they want our protection, but when the chips are down, they're not there. It's an unfriendly country. That's what Donald Trump continued to say in the press. But the criticism would likely escalate into direct threats because President Trump could announce that he's exploring punitive economic measures. If they don't want to be a friend, maybe they don't want to be a trading partner either. He might continue to muse that we're going to be looking at cutting off all trading with Spain, all of it. And we were talking about this a week or two ago. The threat to cut off all trade would be astounding. The United States is one of Spain's largest trading partners outside of the EU. Such a move would violate numerous trade agreements and send shockwaves through the global economy. A frictional or a fictional Treasury Secretary might politically and publicly confirm that he's exploring all available options, which is rhetoric from Washington that would move far beyond a diplomatic dispute because it has become a direct confrontation with Spain. And hypothetically, Spain's decision and the explosive reaction wouldn't happen in a vacuum. The shock wave would radiate outward, shaking the core of the Western alliance. He said, more an air base in Spain is an American air base. Not anymore. Spain said no. do, do you think that America is going to put time and effort into taking a base from Spain that is an American air base in Spain while all resources are being utilized to redirect ships to Iran? I don't think so. One thing America is strong. One thing America is not, militarily or practically or politically dumb as fuck. Why start two wars at the same time? We might have more than enough resources to send a third of our population to one country and destroy them. We don't have the resources to stand alone against two, three, or four countries combined. All it takes is for any one of them to send a large quantity of retaliation directly to American soil, and our entire offense is completely upheavaled. The best offense is a fantastic defense, and the best defense is a fantastic offense. So if we send all of our best defensive fighters to the front lines as the best offensive attack, everything's over there, nothing's over here. Whenever we see that we need reinforcements, we have days, weeks to send those reinforcements so that the onslaught is always over there, nothing over here. But the problem that you have is that if there, that while we still got stuff over here protecting us, how much protection would we have if our transport ships are being destroyed, if our transitional ships are being destroyed, refuel planes are being taken out? You got to understand, in a war, the tactical advantage is in the person that's got the most space between their base and the conflict, right? Yeah, that's a very interesting because I still don't trust Spain. Spain doesn't want to be involved. He said, "Send me homeless." Well, if you sent the convicts instead of sending the homeless, then you wouldn't have to waste as much tax dollars on keeping people locked up. You can just send them over to another country, paratroopers, drop them down and let them do their thing. And you know, no, you don't send them the homeless because the homeless population didn't do anything wrong. You don't want to sacrifice people that they don't have the physical strength and capabilities because they're malnourished. Logistically, that would be an improbable decision to make. Now, prisoners, on the other hand, get a lot of exercise. They be swole. They don't got nothing else to do but fight. So instead of having prison riots, you put them on the first big ass ship that you can get them on and send them over to another location and drop them off with a Bowie knife and you know let them figure it out. Right? We call that exile. It's in our laws. We just never do it. But if we did, especially during war times, I mean, are you supporting the US in conflict? Well, that's an interesting question. It's not about what I support or don't support. I'm actually talking about how the conflict is going to interfere with our ability to make, save, and invest money as we do business with Spain. So, my ability to cover the topic is covering the topic from a financial perspective, but I do have to cover the conflictual political reasons why the relationship between United States and Spain will negatively impact American people's ability to go to Spain, spend money at Spain, invest in businesses in Spain. And then when they have the political uprisings that happen in Spain, where people have demonstrations that sometimes target U.S. visa holders, that is kind of where I am in the discussion. Now, do you support the U.S. conflict with Iran or the disagreement between Spain and the United States? Oh, so he says you're pro-capitalist then. Well, me explaining how your ability to survive in a world where your income is impacted by decisions that you cannot control, then at the end of the day, that doesn't necessarily make me for or against capitalism. It makes it a clear cut discussion about how you spend your money at the pump, how you spend your money at the gas station, how you plan your vacations based off of how the world has changed. And you may be allowed to go to certain places and not allowed to go to other places because of certain conflicts that exist. You may be able to buy certain things and not allowed to buy other things because trade agreements no longer exist. You may be able to invest in certain things and then not allowed to invest in other things because companies no longer exist. So, me reporting that doesn't actually change the dynamic and it doesn't make me pro or non pro capitalist. He says, no, I don't support imperialism. Good job. I respect your ability to, I don't know, kind of be in the middle of something that you don't want to be in the middle of. As kind because that's kind of what's going on right now. Like you're stuck in the middle of something that you claim that you don't want to be in the middle of. But we're in the middle of that. If you're not an enlisted soldier, you have a friend, you have a family member, you have a colleague that is, and a lot of them have been called up over the past 2 months, and some of them are not coming back. The extra money that we're spending on fuel is going to be because of that. The extra money we're going to be paying on groceries is going to be because of that. The extra money we're going to be paying on the goods that we buy that's being shipped in from other countries is going to uh, uh, impact us on that. So, do we directly support it? Not necessarily, but it will impact us. It sounds a bit like you claim to be capable of being neutral on a moving train. Yes, that's a very insightful thought. The ability to remain neutral and call it like it is the fundamental concept of uniformity, because not leaning for or against anything, because it only what matters to me is not what happens in Iran, and what matters to me is not what happens in Spain. What matters to me is what happens to my ability to spend money and my ability to make money, because my survival depends on my ability to obtain resources from the money that I have, and the ability to obtain money so that I can get resources. So, focusing on the fundamental survival requirement, you focus on the fundamental impacts of that survival requirement. And then when you focus on that, then you stop being a pro or non pro capitalist, or a war supporter or a non war supporter. You're a person that gets up every day, you go to work every day, you run your business, you invest in your stocks, bonds, Bitcoin, gold, silver, whatever. You travel with your family, you go on vacations, but you decide where to go and where not to go based on what's happening in your society. You decide what to buy and what not to buy based on conflicts that are happening in and outside of your society. Your ability to buy a new car, for example. Cars that are shipped in from out of the country cost more than cars that are made here. The cars that are made here, that are put together here but manufactured somewhere else, where the pieces are being shipped in from somewhere else, cost $10,000 to $15,000 more than 2 years ago by default. So if you wanted to buy a car, your decision now is, do I pay the extra 15 grand for a brand new car for 2026 that's got the same mileage as a 2024, where the 2024 model would not only be $15,000 less out the gate, it would also have a reduced price because it'd be a certified pre-owned vehicle. These are the things that you have to pay attention to. Now, understandably, the car costs more money because of tariffs. The car costs more money because of political trade disagreements. The car is going to cost more money because the fuel it takes for the country that manufactured the parts is going to cost more because of the Strait of Hormuz conflict, which also means that that country is now going to charge a higher price for its product, and then the higher shipping cost to get that product to America. Then the tariffs in America means that we're going to spend more money on that product in America. So indirectly, I'm still impacted. Yeah, we can call it inflation, but inflation works on two sides of a coin. One side is how much somebody's going to sell it so that they can turn a profit. The other side is how much we're willing to spend on it. So since the largest majority, about 77% of America, is willing to waste money on something just to have it. And a lot of times they're willing to pay more money to get it so that they can be one of very few to have it. The same way the $79,000 Cybertruck got a raise to $100,000, and then they charge him an extra $25,000 to get a Foundation Series logo on the side of the truck to be one of the first people to get the Cybertruck. You're now paying almost 50 or $60,000 more to be a first person to buy the truck, when its original MSRP was 79,995 for the total package. Now you're getting seven. Now you're getting like 125,000 for the base model, and then you still got to pay for upgrades. Which, in order to get what they advertised in the debut, when the window broke on the bullet resistant glass that wasn't supposed to break, that the bullet resistant glass was supposed to be a standard feature. It's not a standard feature; it's an upgrade. So you're going to get $125,000 for the base model, but you're going to spend an extra $30,000 for upgrades. So it's initially a $150,000 truck for the same $80,000 vehicle that was offered in 2019, 2020 debut. That's how your money is impacted. Now, am I for or against what he did and why he did it? Of course not. But the fact that $150,000 is like 10 Nissan Versas. So, do you want to have one Cybertruck or 10 Nissan Versas, or fuck, five Honda Civics, or fuck, four or five Toyota Camrys, or you see what I'm saying, for the same price? Opportunity cost. The quantity of money it takes to get a Cybertruck is the same quantity of money you can start a fleet of rental cars. That's what I'm trying to get you to understand. And so it's clearly about how this impacts you. He said, that's a quote that means basically that you can't be neutral when it comes to the topic of capitalism because you either benefit from the bloodshed or you don't. No, actually, you can be extremely neutral about the topic when it comes to capitalism because the goal is for you to benefit from stuff that is outside of your control so that you don't suffer. Now, a lot of people who don't like capitalism, or a lot of people who don't like war, and a lot of people who don't like conflict might decide to suffer to avoid being the beneficiary of bloodshed. But I am from the perspective of I'm not the one deliberately shedding the blood. So, I mean, if I had to shed the blood in order to make sure that my family survived, that would be a decision that I would have to weigh heavily on the ends justifying the means. But when it comes down to the dynamic of if you're buying bananas in Walmart, the likelihood that somebody died as a result of that is not going to be crossing your mind when you're buying those fucking bananas. The fact that people pay $350 for Jordans in the mall doesn't change the fact that those Jordans could be made in a sweatshop in South Korea because there's a Jordan logo on the side of the shoe, which is a fucking Nike that is overpriced. It is 100 times more than the original shoes cost because a Nike shoe is $35 and a Jordan shoe is $35, which is a Nike shoe with a Jordan emblem on it. So you're paying 100 times more or 10 times more just to get the emblem on it. And you're telling me that, hey, we can buy Jordan shoes and not be a political for or against, but the stitching could be hand stitched by 5-year-olds in, Bangladesh. Doesn't matter. You're going to buy those Jordans because they're Jordans. So you got to really think about how does your decision from your bed to the store or your online shopping scenario directly impact your ability to buy or not buy certain items. Now, I'm going to tell you how the price is going to change and how politics impacts the price of the stuff that you buy. You decide whether or not you pay for it. He says, you either want to stop the train. Nope, I don't want to stop the train. That's the thing. You either want to stop the train or you want to see where it goes. You got to understand remaining. So if there's a here's a scenario. So for your methodical impact, you're saying, well, I'm riding on a train, and the train is supposed to either take out one person or take out many. Do I decide to stop the train to save someone else, or do I let someone else be collateral damage so that I can save myself? In that situation where somebody's got to die, do I have to have the moral or ethical position to decide to save myself or decide to stop the train for to save somebody else and thus killing myself, or should I just let it happen? Now, if you would have been watching this show a year or two ago, I was put in a hypothetical scenario where Mr. Pips asked me a question. We were talking about morals and ethics in that show as well. And I came from the most logical standpoint. If I was driving a vehicle that was going downhill and a person saw this vehicle going downhill and that person decided to walk out in front of that car, would I put every effort into not running over that person or would I allow that person to be a speed bump? And I was perfectly clear that first person accountability, the person that is walking into the street knowing that they could get run over by this car that is barreling down the hill, they're taking a chance of becoming a speed bump because since they are not controlling the car, they cannot assume that the car is going to stop. So if they ended up being a speed bump, then they become a speed bump. Likewise, what decisions would I make barreling downhill at a high rate of speed? Am I going to throw it into a building, potentially killing the people in the building? Am I going to barrel roll the car down the street where it could potentially kill the guy anyway and kill myself? Or am I just going to go ahead and just keep doing what I'm doing? So, under the observation, we're still in a position where I'm responsible for my decisions. You're responsible for yours. So, being on that train, Since you're throwing out that hypothetical train situation, I'm riding on a train, not driving the train. Whatever the train conductor does, I have to navigate around that. If the train conductor decides to knock off one person instead of knocking off a fleet, hey, if the train conductor decides they're going to try to flip this train, I'm going to try to see if I can tuck myself somewhere so that I don't final destination my situation. But since I'm not the one controlling the train, I have to navigate around the outcome. And that's my same position on whether or not capitalism is good or bad, whether or not the war is good or bad. It's because the whole dynamic is not inside of my control. What is inside of my control is how often I pay for gas. How much do I pay for the gas? Do I buy premium gas or do I get regular or unleaded gas? Do I stock up on the cheap gas in the middle of the night so that I don't spend as much money for gas? Or do I go there in the middle of the day? That is what we pay attention to. So he says, benefiting from what's outside of your control only happens when you can bring a part of what is happening within your control and which part is within your control. Well, the stuff that's happening out there in Iran is outside of my control. The cost of materials that are made in China is outside of my control. The cost of the products being sent to America outside of my control. The cost of it after it crosses the tariffs is outside of my control, and its ability to hit the stores where I shop is outside of my control. What is inside of my control is will I pay the price for that item? If I believe I need it or if I really want it, then the answer is yes. If I believe that I would want it, but I would want it at a different price, then I would choose not to buy that item. So, benefiting from what's happening outside of my control is shopping at the grocery store, shopping at the clothing store. He says, so if you choose to invest in conflict or its ripple effects, this is not staying neutral. This is choosing to make money off of it instead of trying to stop it. No, actually, that's not true because what you're saying is that if you don't invest in the ripple effects, uh, you're saying that because war is happening right now and the prices are going up because the war is happening right now, you're not supposed to shop until the war is over. Nobody in America has 3 or 4 months worth of groceries just so that they don't buy stuff at the store until the war is over. And we can't guarantee that what happens with the war is not going to have ripple effects into to August, September, October. So when you're saying that which American people are going to go and try to stop the war in Iran? We had a bunch of American people that were trying to stop immigration deportation in America, and 2 people got murdered from it. That was on the news. So again, you're not making any sense because the ripple effects of what's going on the other side of the country happens with everything you buy. So your toilet paper, your foods, your clothes, your utilities. So you're saying now that you're not going to pay your light bill, water bill, phone bill, your prices go up because of what's happening somewhere else. So you pay for the ripple effects. You have no choice in that. You either pay for the ripple effects or you suffer for not having those resources. It says you were born into the capitalist system, whether you like it or not. True, but you don't have to. You don't have to protest against it. You just have to navigate around it and pay for the things that you need. He says you have to decide to be against it or to be in line with it. Uh, what is the path of least resistance and what is the path of justice? Nope, that has nothing to do with it, sir. You were born in a society where you have to pay for shit in order for you to survive. You have to take your ass to work in order to get money unless you inherited money from somebody else. So ultimately, you're in a position where you either eat or you don't eat. That's what you're deciding. You either wear clothes or you don't wear clothes. That's what you're deciding. That's all you're deciding. Now, if you don't want to be a part of that particular type of society, then you might want to pack your bags and try to go somewhere else. Either are you going to be altruistic or selfish? That's a very good question that I don't have an answer for because at the end of the day, this isn't about me. This is about everybody else on the show and how this is going to positively benefit them in knowing that this stuff is happening and this stuff is impacting their ability to make, save, and invest money. He kind of just like spammed the comment section with a lot of information. He says if the conductor is driving towards a disaster, you can commandeer the train. But I'm not gonna commandeer the train. It's not my choice. The you're, so here's the thing. In 9/11, those planes were headed towards a building. How many people on that plane tried to stop that plane from hitting the building? What, a few hundred people on that plane? It's either gonna crash or it's not. Or you choose not to rock the boat. It's not about rocking the boat, buddy. It's about you navigating around the things that are outside of your control. If you're in a ship that's sinking, how do you stop it from sinking? But if you're in a ship that's sinking, how do you keep yourself from drowning? You and whoever else that you value around you. You got to find something that floats and you got to get on top of something that floats. You don't stop the ship from sinking because the ship is sinking, right? If you were on the Titanic, are you going to try to stop this ship from sinking? Or are you going to try to get as far away from the sinking ship as possible so that you're not carried under with the ship? Again, you're in a position where you just have to navigate around the things that are outside of your control. Either who are you, a trader, a business owner? Yeah, that's a very good that's a very good observation. Not talking about uh, substance shopping. That is fine. No. You're saying that you're not talking about substance shopping. No, I'm talking about substance shopping. So you're trying to redirect it to a straw man topic and try to make it about like political uh disarray in another country. And I'm telling you, no, this is about substance shopping. You said, so I mean, betting on markets and stocks and supply lines. In order for you, capitalism is going to be about you not being broke because you took your money and you bet against the market. You bet against bullshit. You invested in chaos. You invested in somebody else's suffering. Can you find an investment opportunity where you're not benefiting from somebody else's mistake? You can't. When you give money to the stock market, somebody else is selling the stock. In order for you to turn a profit on that stock, ultimately, you have to sell the stock higher than you paid for it, which means somebody else had to make a bad choice to buy the stock higher than what you paid for it so that they can now own that same stock and you benefited the difference, which means they took a financial loss. So you benefited from somebody else's mistake. So, yeah, you're going to bet on the market, you're going to bet on stocks, gold, silver, whatever, the supply lines and whatever profit that you turn from that you can survive off of. It's the same thing as buying from the grocery stores. You're going to spend extra money on stuff that costs more money because it doesn't come from America. Now, you can change the way you buy things and you can only go to Whole Food stores that just mom and pop shops down the street, but the quality of your food is going to be different. As the prices go up because the war is paid for by the working class on behalf of the ruling class. Okay, it was that is I think you answered it so far with your responses that you would prefer the selfish choice, but I disagree. You are right. I have crashed the comment section. Yeah, I'm allowing you to kind of tiptoe around because I'm gonna get back to the main point here because you know uh you're not making any sense with your line of discussion. Uh, ultimately, I actually prefer to make sure that I have what I need to get the things that I want and do the things that I want to do. And that's what the majority of the Americans want to do. That's what the majority of people around the world want to do is to make sure that they have enough to do what they want to do as well as do what they need to do. Fundamentally, to do what they need to do over what they want to do, because when they can't do what they want to do because they can't afford it, they want to at least have their basic needs, and that's just human nature. So I don't understand your dynamic. I mean, it seems like you're trying to compartmentalize me into a box that doesn't exist, but I see where you're coming from. It says you are conflating uh, substance shopping with your market speculations, and you are betting. We are surviving the consequences of your bets. No, no, I'm not conflating anything. I'm actually articulating the indirect as well as direct consequences of cost increase that's happening directly in America, where your prices are going to go up because of things that are outside of your control. And then I'm articulating that you should probably redirect your decision making so that you're not as negatively impacted by the things that are happening outside of your control. Now, as far as my ability to bet on the stock market, oh yeah, you can buy into real estate investment trusts and other such stocks, bonds, and everything to that effect, where you can turn 20% returns on the cost of those particular products. But REITs are losing their share price because tenants are going overseas, which is partly impacting things. People aren't able to pay their rent because the government's been shut down for 2 months, partly impacting things. But the REITs are still paying their percentages. So their dividend payouts have essentially have their stock prices cheaper, their annual returns are higher. So instead of certain stocks being 10, 15, $20 a share, they're 2, 5, $9 a share, where they're giving away a 20% return. I tell you, go and look into that for yourself, but I'll buy into that every day of the week, because instead of buying it at $30 a share or 100, 200, $300 a share, I'm buying it for $2.50 or $5 a share, where I'm still getting between 8 and 15 cents a share back, where I'm looking at about a 20% return annually. And a 20% return on that particular type of investment is beneficial for me in the long run, especially if I can ride that wave for 15 or 20 years. Highly unlikely, probably average about 15%. But the returns on investment means that if I'm putting away a decent quantity of money, I can work myself out of a working class idea and into a financially self sustainable idea. And every working class American can do the same, which actually has absolutely nothing to do with the world, but indirectly, yes, the conflicts that happen over there cause stocks to fluctuate over here. And while the stocks are cheaper, people who don't have as much money as the billionaires can buy into those stocks cheaper and make them a ton of money, because those stocks will go back up. So he says, you are, I'm not, because you buy in capitalism. I don't. Oh, so you don't buy anything then. You just steal what you want, because if you buy absolutely anything with the money that you work for, you're buying into capitalism. That's pretty much how that works. Is that I'm making plenty of sense? Nope, you have not made one lick of sense so far. You say you're just a capitalist and you cannot convince a man of something he's uh something his salary depends on. Oh, okay. Something his salary depends on. Have a good night. Oh, good. So you're leaving. Thank you, Jesus. Whew. If I could sprinkle some salt on the podcast after that, so he don't swing back around, that would be fantastic. Uh, so he's claiming that I am just a capitalist. I don't really see how that makes any sense. Doesn't bother me at all. But you can't convince a man of something his salary depends on. I don't know. Again, you're not making sense. I don't know what are you referring to. You can understand the links between capitalism, imperialism, and white supremacy. What does white supremacy have to do with gas prices costing more at the pump in the past 3 weeks? But my bad. Carry on with your topic. Thank you so much, because I mean you did a good job of derailing the topic, and I entertained it for a little bit because I thought you were going to make it make sense somewhere, but apparently you didn't. So is that not understanding is the when you are acting like it is. Oh well, no, it not understanding where you're coming from. This wasn't expected to be a win, because what you're talking about is a straw man topic from the main topic today. Because today's topic is about how Spain doubled down on its position and how that negatively impacts America. We're actually on the portion of the topic about why that happened, and then we're going to segue into a portion of the topic about how that impacts us and what we're going to be dealing with as it pertains to that. Because when we start talking about Madrid later this week as a place to go and live, we're going to be discussing about how um, your ability to live in Madrid during the current times might be a little bit challenging, because as soon as you start showing your US passport, any activists out there that are not okay with US's decisions might take it out on US citizens. And that's going to impact your ability to travel there, while Spain is not negatively impacting civilian travel and is not interfering with civilian commerce. The civilian people in Spain may backlash against American citizens that are tourists simply because of what the White House is deciding to do to China, which has nothing to do with what you're talking about right now. So, if you want to call your strawman topic a win for yourself, if that helps you sleep at night, then by all means. But I'm not. I only entertained your comments because your comments seemed like you might have had something important to say, and you don't have to agree with me. I would entertain your comments if they're appropriately structured about an appropriate topic, and you've managed to meet the minimum criteria of that. But you're segueing down a dark hole of really no factual points of any kind, and it's almost like you really want to interrogate my beliefs to judge if I should even notify people that things are changing. And that brings down the magnitude, just like I talked to Charlie last week. What qualifications would you be satisfied with for somebody to say, hey, I found something out and you should probably know? You know, uh, what qualifications do you need to receive new information that you didn't already have? And then what qualifications does a person need to verify with you the same information that you got from somewhere else, where we're digging a little bit deeper into the same information? Nowhere in there does any of that have to do with the fact that shit's happening and the world is changing, and it is changing from what we're used to into something that we're not used to. And then the question is, what do we do about it? Now, your straw man topic has nothing to do with that. So for me to say that I don't understand why you brought it up, that is not a win. That's just an epic fail for you to piece together what you're talking about and how that impacts what I was originally talking about. Is that how does Spain relate to American imperialism? I'm not talking about American imperialism. See what I'm talking about? So you asked me, well, how does Spain relate to American imperialism in a deteriorating American dollar? Uh, uh, I don't get it. Then you're asking about rising communist China. That has nothing to do with what I'm talking about. My invitation is so mysterious. You're trolling very good, but you're asking rhetorical questions at this point because Spain's position to not be involved in political conflict comes fundamentally from the uprising that that country received the last time it aided America in a conflict. So their stance is not just simply a rebellion against American decisions, it is to prevent a civil unrest where they don't want to be overthrown because they helped America blow up Iran. That has nothing to do with what you're talking about. He said, you are whether you like it or not. Well, I never said that I was or I was not. I said, I don't understand why you're talking about this because uh, you're not paying attention to the topic. He said, you're ignoring the elephant in the room and behaving like your commentary is informed. Oh, well, if you don't like the information that I have to deliver, then why are you here? Because at the end of the day, I hit your For You channel. So you deliberately come here so that you can entertain my comments. When capitalists talk about imperialism, they miss the point apparently. But see, that's the thing. A a capitalist can claim to be capitalist and then talk about imperialism. And when they're talking about an imperialism topic, then you can argue with them about imperialism. I'm not sitting here having a debate about imperialism. So you're not talking about anything that I'm referring to at this point. He said, you just said you're not talking about imperialism, and I said you are. Okay. Yeah, exactly. Algorithm put me into your For You feed, so you're lost, and now you're sitting here trying to um, really change the direction of our topic. You're giving me a chance. Well, I'm actually giving you a chance. You're not giving me a chance. So here's the thing, buddy. So if you were giving me a chance to really talk about the topic that I brought to everybody's decision today, then what would happen is that you would be quiet and listen to what we have to say. And then if you disagree with it, you just don't come back to the show. If you agree with it, you can keep coming back to the show. If you have comments that are on topic, which your comments have nothing to do with today's topic, then we can discuss about what's going on with the Spain position against America and how that impacts American money. Or if you disagree with the war, you can tell me that you disagree with the war, which I'm not going to have a comment on. If you agree with the war, I'm not going to have a comment on that either, because that's not what I'm here about. I don't really care about the war. I care about the fact that the war will impact me the way it impacts everybody else in America. So you're not giving me a chance. I'm giving you a chance. And if your dialogue does not satisfy the way this podcast is structured, then you end up not being able to comment on the podcast anymore. So I'm trying to see if you are going to be a positive influence on the podcast or if you're going to be a negative influence. Now, once I observe the fact that you're a negative influence on the podcast, we don't have to agree or disagree. It's just that your behavior is inappropriate. And once I determine that your behavior is inappropriate, then you're no longer here. So you've got to understand, I stand on my non-negotiable expectations for behavior. You don't have to agree with my expectations, but you do got to respect them while you're here. Now, once I recognize that you're not, that's when I remove you from my channel. He said, you are demonstrating the capitalists when challenged are evasive and non-committal. What am I committing to? Because that's not about my topic. I'll give you a chance. Nah, well, you're about to be removed, buddy. He said, we'll agree to disagree about whether my comments have anything to do with anything. Uh, all I can say is you're being ridiculous. He said, how you doing, sir? Could you explain about Spain? Well, I recommend, because we've been here for an hour, 21 minutes, that you go back and watch the show from the beginning before Nolly Nostrom decided to completely steer the conversation far away from our discussion today. Today, we were actually talking about how Spain has upped its position from just not allowing America from to use the bases in Spain for their skirmish against Iran to now not allowing America to use airspace to go to Iran, which also costs a larger quantity of fuel and resources from America to get to Iran for the Iran conflict. And that causes a problem because the extra fuel cost and resource cost is going to cost the American people more money. And that's what we were supposed to be talking today, because Monday's topics are about how politics negatively impacts our ability to make, save, and invest money here in America and other places around the world. Because when political trades change, trade agreements change, tariffs start happening, conflicts start occurring, prices start going up, products stop being accessible, or if they're still accessible, the products start being jacked up in prices because of the trade routes, supply chains change, distribution routes change, and all of these changes are changes that are outside of our control. And I discuss how these things are changing in real time, which also puts us in a position to determine that we should probably rethink how we approach society, whether we're going to purchase certain things, not purchase certain things, if we're benefiting from even things like pharmaceuticals. Your medication comes from different countries. And if we're not in a good position with certain countries, your medication may not be readily available anymore, which means that you need to find a solution, an alternative to that medication. When they change the laws related to the pharmaceuticals, certain medications are no longer going to be accessible because the people who approve those medications no longer have the incentive to improve those medications, which means that what you used to take for your blood pressure, your diabetes might not be readily accessible because the company that used to promote certain products aren't incentivized to promote those products anymore. Then you also have the increased prices of medical treatment and medical care, because as prices change, premiums change, and as premiums change, your cost for health insurance change. That's how we talk about stuff, right? Now, Noli took it a completely different direction. And Noli was trying to talk about capitalism and imperialism, which has absolutely nothing to do with what I'm trying to discuss here. But at the end of the day, I had to try to entertain him and give him a chance, because sometimes people come into the channel on a Monday and think that I'm like a far left wing or a far right wing, and they got prepped to come dive into the comment section and try to outsmart me with their Google Siri scenario and discuss something that is not about today's topic, and then when I don't entertain that because I'm not coming from a political position, I'm coming from a this is how it impacts our paycheck position. Then they realize, oh fuck, I can't debate with this guy because this guy has absolutely no care about anything other than this fucks with my money. Is it I'm gonna go ahead and subscribe to your channel. You should, because tomorrow we're gonna be talking about Bitcoin. Wednesday we're gonna be talking about Madrid. Thursday, Friday, and Saturday we're gonna be talking about ways to improve yourself, improve your decision making skills. Different Mondays we cover different topics. But right now, what's going on in politics is hurting our money quickly. And then Tuesdays we talk about different ways to make, save, and invest money, different ways to earn money either in person or automating it from online, building up a digital nomad presence where you can travel while working, or the ability to invest in ways where you can save money and invest money so that you can stop working and then just live off of your portfolio, where you know where the money's coming from and your bills are not being paid in advance. So all of this stuff turns you into a position where you go from struggling on a day-to-day basis, living from paycheck to paycheck, to not struggling anymore. Being able to find another way to turn over capital allows for people like TSA agents to still have a second or third income coming in that does not impact their standard of living when they're no longer getting paid from the government since January or February of 2026, where we're now in April and they still can't pay for certain shit. I'm talking about how I said in January that I said in October and November that they were going to shut down again in January, and they did, but they had the 2 week layover because there was a contingency clause. And right after that contingency clause, I said last year that TSA wasn't going to get paid again. And I was like, hey, if you put your money up in a way where your money's making money for you, you will be able to survive, even if they don't pay you for 2 or 3 months. And lo and behold, they're 2 months going into three and they're not getting paid. Right. So I covered that. And then I covered ways to start up side jobs and turn a hobby into a side hustle, and turn a side hustle into a business, automate that business, step away from that business so that you can relax and still get paid. And not a lot of people come on a Monday and realize, oh shit, this podcast is about self-improvement. It's about business. It is about society. It's not about politics, but politics does impact your ability to make, save, and invest money. So I do cover politics on Monday. He said, yeah, I'm a medical carrier in California and I fill up at least once a day, spending an extra $25 at fill up. And that's what I was covering today. What you're going through right now is exactly what I was covering today. That extra $25 is because they're spending extra money on oil in two scenarios. One, because there's more money, there's more cost for the oil to come out of the Strait of Hormuz, and there's more oil being used for the war. So that means there's less oil at America, which means there's more oil per or more cost per barrel for us at the pump. An extra $10 or $15 a barrel can turn into an extra 75 cents a gallon, or an extra 25 cents a gallon. And an extra 25 cents a gallon over the course of uh, uh, 10 or 20 gallons turns into an extra 10, $20 of extra gas per fill up. And if you're looking at an extra $25 per fill up and you fill up 4 times a month, that's an extra $100 a month, which is an extra $1,000 a year. That's the stuff that we cover on the podcast. So then I'm like, well, shit. If you want to offset your losses, you can do things like buy into the oil stocks that are increasing in value and paying dividends. You can buy into the real estate investment trust that are paying massive dividends. You can make back that $100 a month loss in gas by buying stocks, bonds, and real estate that produces generated monthly capital that can subsidize your income, where you're not going to feel the impact of the increase of cost because you can't control the increase. That's what I talk about. Well, this guy's on something else. He said, well, what I believe is that politics and economics are inseparable. Okay. Oh no, you said inseparable. I saw that. I got to get my prescription renewed. Inseparable. So you're saying that politics and economics are inseparable. All right. Fundamentally, I can't argue with that. Politics impacts your ability to make, save, and invest money, and politics does impact economics. But your political belief, Your belief whether or not to be pro or against war has nothing to do with my discussion about the economics of how politics is currently operating. Whether or not I'm a Republican or a Democrat has nothing to do with how politics impacts economy. My political beliefs have nothing to do with my discussion about how politics impacts the economy. So, since you understand that politics and economy are inseparable, and I'm talking about how politics impacts economy, now you understand why I'm telling you that your conversation makes absolutely no sense in what we're talking about because do what I believe has nothing to do with what I got to pay for when I leave the house. You say, I'm not so sure. Yeah, I know. And that's the whole point. Because you're not sure, you don't make sense. If you were sure about what you were talking about and you were able to deliver an articulable discussion, then we could actually talk about something of meaning. But right now we're discussing about how costs are going up. And we're talking about how costs are going up because shit's happening outside of our control. Now, how does my political views have anything to do with that? Do you think because wearing a blue shirt today that I'm a Republican and you just came here because you wanted to argue with a brother? uh is that I drink gasoline and my wallet hurts more than my stomach. Well, scientifically speaking, ethanol, uh diethyl ether can be conformed into an alcoholic substance. That's one of the reasons why some people have done some YouTube channels where they take it like what is that 99 banana the pure alcohol substance and pour it into their gas tanks and use it for fuel. The only reason why it doesn't work 100% of the way people think it is because some of those um alcohols have uh flavored substances in them that develops a syrup, and then that syrup gets sticky and it freezes up your engine. But when it's just pure alcohol, oh yeah, you can take a bottle of alcohol and dump it into your gas tank. So whether you're drinking it at the bar or burning it in your gas tank, yeah, your stomach gonna hurt because it's gonna cost you more money. Because LOL, no, I'm not as sure as you. So we're on the opposite sides of the spectrum. We're on opposite sides because you don't agree that politics impacts your ability to make and save money. Then I don't come to argue. I just speak my perspective, and it has not agreed with you. Carry on, brother. But you have your perspective was interesting. Your perspective was to attack my political beliefs and then attack my ethics and morals, and assume that I am capitalist because I'm talking about the war. You're assuming that because I'm not going to make any changes to the war, that I'm pro-war. Then you're assuming that I don't have enough knowledge to know about imperialism, which I'm not talking about imperialism. I'm not talking about overthrowing anybody's government. I'm not talking about whether or not Donald Trump is making the right decisions. I'm not talking about whether or not Republicans are smarter than Democrats. I'm just talking about how Spain changed their mind, or not changed their mind, but stood on their position, and they're not participating in the war. Now, since I have only talked about what is already in the press, I have not presented my particular position at all. So you and I can't be on opposite sides of anything unless you are opposing me for talking about it. Now, if you're opposing me for talking about it, there's nothing I can do, you know, but oh, you support communism. Fantastic. Because actually, that's what poor people are supposed to do, because communism is truthfully the ability to share resources regardless of who you are and how much effort you put into society, which is ironically a democratic model. It is also a model in Korea and Asia. There's a lot of areas out there where different countries are more communist than America. But no, you're assuming that I support capitalism because I would encourage people to, instead of waiting on a government to give you money while we are being controlled by a political party that is enforcing capitalist beliefs, that we instead redirect our attention to investing in things that will turn us a profit so that we will not have to struggle as we get older, because the older we get, the less capable we are. We might be able to carry 10 tons of concrete on a daily basis in our 20s, and we might not be able to carry two 10-pound bags of sugar in our 60s. So the difference is that instead of waiting until it's too late to change the way you do you, I encourage people to start finding other ways to survive, so that when they're physically incapable of doing it, when they're too old to do it, or when they just get tired of the fucking shit, that they can quit doing it and just go do something else. But their standard of living is still covered, no matter what that standard is. Now, if you believe that that's me supporting capitalism, that's your belief. But that was never my declaration. Is that I got a Sinclair gas station. I go to every night, and it's $5. Fuck me, bro. I'm at pumps right now that are like 287. Well, the cheap gas is 287. The premium gas is like 336. So if I the next time I go to the pump, and I don't even drive that much because I have Walmart.com drop shit off at the house. I'm ordering stuff online, Temu, Amazon, whatever. So stuff gets shipped in. And that's another thing. Every time I buy something, if I'm buying something that's going to get shipped in from China, then guess what? According to this guy, then that means that I am siding with capitalism, because I am siding with the war, because I'm willing to buy something that will get shipped in from China cheaper than what it will get shipped in from California. Do I give a fuck where it comes from? No, I care that it's cheaper coming from China. I just got to wait 14 days instead of getting it in 5. Does it matter to me? No, because I saved money on what I went and got. But but this guy is crazy. But yeah, I don't drive that often because of the fact that everything gets delivered to me. So maybe once a week, once or twice a week, I go somewhere. So my 1 gallon of gas will last me 2 or 3 months. But the last time I went to the pump, I was like, holy shit, gas is going up. You're dealing with 540. Jesus. Oh, and then Chevron, yeah, Chevron's gonna be over $6. But Chevron actually has priority control over Venezuela. So I would have expected Chevron to be cheaper. Exxon Mobil and Shell is not positioned in Venezuela. And they're going to have to put a lot of money into being positioned in Venezuela. So I actually thought that Chevron would have had cheaper gas, but they are in fact selling a brand. So it could be more the brand Chevron, not the price of oil. And then whether or not the oil is coming from the strait, or if it's just coming directly here. So you are capitalist because you're business owner interested in making money and with no awareness of socialism, apparently. Oh, well, see, now you're just taking shots, because now you're telling me that I don't know about socialism. What does socialism have to do with Spain not wanting America to use Spanish airspace for the Iran war? Yeah, I got you on thin ice right now. I'm one step away from hitting that block button. I'm trying to be patient with you. He said, okay, then be on my side. No, it's not about being on your side. You came here with sides. I was the one that was talking about something completely different from what you were talking about. You are making absolutely no sense, because again, I don't have a side. And the reason why I don't have a side is because it's not about being capitalist. It's not about being communist. It's about how society is changing and how it impacts your money. You came up here trying to take sides. So you decided that you were going to take a stance in opposite of me so that you can argue with me. And I've entertained it for about 40 minutes now. And you're doing it under the observation, while derailing the podcast, to keep my attention to you about something that has nothing to do with today's topic. Your responses to my comments, as if I need to be banned soon, does not suggest friendliness to communism. No, my ability to suggest banning you soon because your comments are not related to today's topic. That is why I would ban you. You notice the other guy's comment about gas going up is directly in line with today's topic, because we're talking about the war making prices go up. Notice the difference between your comments of accusing me of having a political belief that that I did not declare in today's show, versus your ability to devalue my logic, my reasoning, my ability to have awareness of socialism, which has absolutely nothing to do with what's going on between Iran, Spain, and the United States. You are directly attacking me with your declarations, which has nothing to do with today's topic. And that's why I will be talking about banning you because part of YouTube's guidelines is that we're not supposed to be having what is identified as hate speech, which is a direct attack against a specific individual. So I am pointing out that you're on thin ice. And by the time I get through with some of your comments, I might just go ahead and block you just because. Because I apologize if I oversimplified or jumped to conclusions. You jumped far over the line of a conclusion. I can hold forgiveness for you. I don't even care if you'll dislike the show and subscribe to the channel so that you can dislike it every day. Because, truth be told, the algorithm is going to push every reaction to the show. If you don't like what you're watching, instead of arguing with me about it, you can always go somewhere else. But if you're going to have a healthy discussion, by all means, let's have a healthy discussion. He says, is Spain's elected government normally socialist or not? That has absolutely nothing to do with today's discussion. The political dispute that has happened in Spain is that the people rioted when Spain helped United States attack Iraq in 2003, and Spain is not going to go through that again. So Spain is not going to help the United States attack Iran. That is what we're talking about right now. Now, what does that have to do with socialism or not? That's why I said you were on thin ice. He said, there's another gas station I go to, and it's a small mom and pop station. He used to use a Chevron name, but then they were charging him for using the brand. So he renamed it and still buys from Chevron. But then he could charge a whole lot less. So that's gonna be the labeling. So because he's got Chevron on his building, Chevron's charging him for that. So he would charge customers more, and that's why Chevron gas will cost more because the customer is ultimately going to assume the cost of the company. He said, so you get to fill up $5.40 a gallon of Chevron. Ooh, not I'm doing $2.87. He said, you are incorrectly accusing me of category error. No, I am directly pointing out the category error because our category of today is supposed to be about Spain not liking the US going after Iran, and Spain is not supporting Iran in any, or Spain is not supporting the Iran United States war in any way, not using the bases, not using the airspace. And because that's what I'm talking about today, you are telling me that I'm a capitalist, and you're telling me that I am specifically unknowledgeable about socialism. Being a capitalist or not being a capitalist, being a communist or not being a communist has nothing to do with Iran not letting the United States use the airspace in order to bomb Iran. They're not the same topic. He said, I actually have a show of my own and we're live tomorrow. Fantastic. So that means you won't be here tomorrow. Good job. He said, that sounds nice. I wish those prices were here. Look, yeah, look, you gotta. So this is another thing that we talk about on this show is that when you start thinking about the cost of living that you have right now versus the preferred cost of living, what we discuss is one of the things that you can do because if you work for a brick and mortar company, you have to show up every day. When you work for yourself, when you establish an income off of the computer, then you can have the capabilities of moving to another place, still making the same money that you was making, but living at a cheaper cost. So California is one of the most expensive places in America. New York, Florida, Texas, and you could effectively move to Central America, something like Tennessee, Kentucky, Arkansas, Wyoming, maybe even the south side of Illinois, and you can Nebraska. You can find cheaper prices than what you would find in California. But what it takes is a different. Uh, you would have to relocate your whole employment, and that's going to be hard to do. He said, "Oh, so he said, look up. No, we're not going to do that. Abby, do it. Abby do, Abby don't. No, we're not going there. We're not. We got it. We're live 7 nights a week, buddy. So we're not going to be going to your show. I appreciate. So sounds like Abby, you might be Abby. So open discussion panels. No, we're not going to do that. I'm just going to let you know that we actually have an open discussion panel. It's just that you didn't dive in on that. Probably because you wasn't paying attention to that part. He said, I'm spending about 2,200 a month on gas. So that means that you're paying like 22,000 or 24,000 a year on just gas. That sucks. That sucks. But if you're spending almost 24, 25,000 a year on gas, you're drawing back probably 100 or $150,000 income in California, which would be probably a quarter, if not a third, of your income. Standard of living over there, you're probably paying something close to $70,000 for your house, because usually the income is going to be the cost of living. The cost of the house is 60% of your income usually, because they want you to make three times the rent. So the house, apartment, loft, whatever that you're paying for should probably cost you about 60,000. And if you're spending 24,000 on gas, or yeah, about 24, 25,000 on gas, 60,000 on your unit, and which is like 85,000, gives you about 15,000 for miscellaneous things. You're probably making about 100, 120,000 in California, and you're living paycheck to paycheck. That is the dynamic. 1099, and then you got to pay taxes at the end of the year because they're not taking it out of your check. So I see. I guess you're busy. My co-host is a Black American woman. Doesn't change anything. Whenever we cover a topic about women, y'all can dive in and advocate for women, because we cover that at some point, not intentionally, because this is a male driven podcast from the male's perspective. But I mean, if the black woman that you got on your show wants to come over here and argue against my observations that it's a financially irresponsible decision for some situations, then yeah, we can discuss that. But we're live 7 nights a week. I curate my research every day. So what's going to happen on this podcast is that we don't have. Uh, I have to go to All Star Izzy show one day. I got to make time for him. And then there was another show. I forgot the name of it. They wanted me to join their show, but I gotta deal with the internet situation before we start live streaming with them. So we're gonna be getting fiber optics here before we do anything else. But no, we by the time I finish with this podcast, I'm gonna see myself with clients that we're gonna be dealing with that I have in Asia. So you accuse me of being a capitalist, and it's like instead of struggling to make money in America, I make money from clients in Asia. So I mean that's a capitalist move. So that I can make sure that I feed my family. I mean, it is what it is. It is nice the IRS allowing us to write off 72 dollars and 50 cents a mile. If you're using a commercial vehicle, you can also write off maintenance. You can, if you replace the vehicle with a new work vehicle, you can get 100% depreciation value off your work vehicle, which can also give you more tax deductions. Um, then storage of that vehicle, which includes like um, if you have to pay to park it somewhere, tolls and everything to that effect, all that's part of the job. If you claim all of those things, then you can get a lot more deductions above and beyond simply claiming the gas mileage. So just take that into consideration when you're doing your taxes, because taxes is due by next Wednesday. So if y'all ain't did it yet, the 15th is right around the corner. Y'all got to get y'all taxes done if y'all ain't done it yet. Is that, do you mind if I ask your position on reparations, or is that derailing? That is completely derailing. Um, because we're not talking about race or slavery or anything to that effect. We're talking about Spain. We're talking about um, Iran. We're talking about the United States going to Iran and using Spain. That so reparations have absolutely nothing to do with that. And ultimately, since the modern 25-year-old and up is not impacted by the past. The question of reparations dies with the 65-year-olds. So, should the people that were born before 1965 get reparations, it would give them a pretty good retirement. But if they've already got Social Security, disability, and potentially veterans benefits, uh, whether they earned it or not, the fact is that they're already getting something. How much more do you want to give somebody that's old and dying? Everybody that was born after 1965 has no entitlement to reparations because they're not directly impacted by slavery. They're directly impacted by poor choices by themselves and their parents, their lack of education and their lack of desire to seek education. So reparations is not really a discussion in 2026 because anybody that was born in 2000, anybody that was born in 1990, 1980, don't and I'm in 1980s group doesn't have any entitlement to reparations. Now, if I inherited reparations from somebody else, because I told you, those people who watched the show before, the only vote that Hillary Clinton would not Hillary, Camilla Harris would have got from me is because she would have been giving $1.3 million to the last generation of descendants of reparations. I had that discussion that day. You should go back and watch the show when I talked about that. Uh, and it had nothing to do because I did not agree with any other view that she had, but having a living relative that was impacted in that year, that living relative would have left me that $1 million. So I really would have voted just to inherit the money. But again, it's a decision that is based on the direct impact of stuff that is outside of my control that impacts my ability to make, save, and invest money. It would not be a decision that would be based on, oh, I feel bad for somebody else. I have no uh value in how other people impact other people. My value is how I impact other people and how other people impact me. It's a direct correlation between one another, which is why I tell you that your comments are inappropriate because your reparations discussion is not a direct impact on Spain. It's not a direct impact on uh uh, uh Iran. It's not a direct impact on the United States flying to Spain to get to Iran. It's completely different. So honestly, I'm glad that you don't jump on the chance to claim you are a capitalist. That's all I'm against. Why? Why? What benefit do I have for jumping on the chance of claiming capitalists? I really think that that's ridiculous. To Why do I have to self-proclaim capitalist? Why do I have to self-proclaim that? Is there, can you justify that for me? Why do I have to self-proclaim capitalist so that I can discuss what's going on with Iran and Spain and America and ships flying to Iran through Spain? Why do I have to claim capitalism? You know, to me, I think that you're doing a hard troll right now. You know, and I'm only entertaining it. I shouldn't be. I should have blocked you a while back. I should have blocked you an hour ago. Uh, but I was hoping that you were going to be positive, and you're failing. You know, so that was my perspective. But I understand that some people need attention, so I gave it to you for about 52 minutes. But now we're going to get back to the show. Now, as it pertained to the alliance that Spain had with America, which had nothing to do with what Nostrum was talking about. Uh, the first and most significant impact would be on NATO itself. So while Spain's actions wouldn't trigger Article 5, it would strike at the heart of the alliance and its political cohesion. At NATO headquarters, the mood would be tense. Spain's move raises a fundamental question: is solidarity automatic or even for conflicts outside of treaties' original scope, or is it conditional? Spain would be forcefully arguing for the latter, right? Now, the crisis would also ripple through the European Union, revealing a different split. On one hand, Europe's major powers, France, Germany, and the United Kingdom, might be more sympathetic to the American position, quietly keeping their own airspace and bases open. However, this would change the moment a fictional President Trump threatens a trade war. Now, the threat to cut off all trade with Spain is a threat against the European Union's single market itself. Suddenly, Spain would find new allies. French President Emmanuel Macron might publicly state that while Paris disagrees with Madrid's military stance, unilateral US trade sanctions are unacceptable and would be met with a firm, unified EU response, which would inherently cause the entire European Union to trade against it. Trump's economic bulging would have inadvertently pushed the European Union to close ranks around Spain, at least on the economic front. And this is going to create a complex conflict. Spain at odds with its NATO allies on military cooperation, but its EU partners backing it against American economic threats, which are two different things, all of which had nothing to do with what Nordstrom was talking about. This complex web of shifting alliances and high stakes power plays is fascinating to explore. So, what happens in those geopolitical war games that has consequences for all of us, exposing the cracks in the global war order, where we often take this stuff for granted if you want to stay ahead of the curve and get in depth analysis that connects the dots on these crucial stories, where I'm coming from a position of uniformity. You got to make sure that you guys like and subscribe and hit those notification bells, because to truly understand why the Spanish government might risk such a crisis where America, Donald Trump is talking about like an embargo where they're going to cut off all trade. And then if the European Union cuts off all trade, everything you get from Europe is not being sent to America anymore, which means you can't buy certain things, which means that the price of other things is going to go up because it's going to be in a higher demand with a low supply. There isn't going to be a competitive price because that market is closed off. All these things are going to change for you. You have to look inward. Pedro Sanchez's hypothetical bold stance wouldn't be a reckless gamble. It would be a calculated move that is rooted in his country's psyche. The single most important factor is the powerful, deeply ingrained anti war sentiment among the Spanish populace. The memory of the 2003 Iraq War remains a defining political event, and the images of millions marching and the subsequent electoral punishment of the government that ignored them created a powerful lesson aligning with American military adventures against popular opinions will be political suicide. And that's what we were talking about today when Nostrum came in here misguided and incorrect about my political stance and my political belief, because this isn't a political belief. This is actually what happened. The country removed its previous political leaders because the country disagreed with cooperating with the United States to go and attack Iraq. And now that the United States is going to attack Iran, the current political leaders are not going to cooperate. That's where we are. Now, whether or not I'm a red guy or a blue guy, whether or not I'm a socialist or a capitalist or a communist has absolutely nothing to do with any of those things. What matters is that Spain has set the standard and America's got to get on board or respond accordingly. When a hypothetical Sanchez declares no a la Garua, where that means no war, like they're not supporting war, he is speaking directly to his voters, the people who are going to vote him back into office. Okay, so because the current political leaders are socialists. What does that have to do with explain it where you make sense that them being socialist leaders have anything to do with them not wanting the US to attack Iran from their territory, impacting our ability to buy stuff in America. What does that matter? Explain it. You're saying, wow. I'm like, final nail on the coffin right now. Explain it. Because if America, if we're in a position, I mean, Donald Trump got a second time around because 70% of America, including you, voted him in. Right? Now, if we didn't like what he did the last time, we would not allow him to get a second term. The public did not allow their previous political leaders to get another term. They voted against them. The current person that's here doesn't want to be voted out of office, so he is sticking with his constituents' expectations of not supporting wars that they're not involved in. How is being socialist in that? That's actually a democratic position. That actually has absolutely nothing to do with socialist or non-socialist. Because if we didn't want Donald Trump in office when Donald Trump was starting wars in 2017, we wouldn't have voted him back in. If the current president didn't want to be voted out of office, then that current president would recognize that the last political leader lost his political position because he defied his people. At the end of the day, they probably are more united in Spain than what we are, but how does that change anything? So if they were not socialists in power, they would be like the other European powers who are bowing to the U.S. because they are not socialist governments. No, they are not bowing to the United States governments because they're not socialist powers. Standing for, so you have to understand that a government deciding not to be involved, like for example, Canada is not supporting the war. Canada's not giving America a bunch of free oil. Canada, just like Switzerland, is a neutral country. All of their trade agreements and everything to that effect, their alliances with other countries, is from a I am not going to support your military actions perspective. So nobody's bombing us because we sent our flag with your flag to go fuck somebody up. That's not happening. Now, does that make Canada socialist? I think not. They're coming from a strict position of neutrality. You can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink. I know, and for some reason, you are so hard headed. I'll let you ride the wave for like an hour and 2 minutes already, and you're. I don't understand what's going on with you because ultimately the the dynamic is clear. Is that if I don't want to lose my political seat, that I'm going to follow what my voters tell me to follow. That's not socialist. Donald Trump does what he does because the 1% and all of the Trump followers, and then all of the people who claim to be Republican who are not Trump followers, all are going the same way. They're going wherever Donald Trump is going, right? Now, it doesn't matter if Donald Trump makes good decisions or not. What matters is that the largest quantity of individuals are following his lead. So it doesn't matter whether or not he's making a decision from a socialist perspective or a capitalist perspective. What matters is that 70% of the country is going to follow that outcome regardless. See, so Canada's definitely not socialist. It's a what to the American empire? I wouldn't say that, although things are changing now as Spain is showing. Well, Spain is putting up a position right now where Spain is not going to be a part of international conflicts. And that's what I was reading all from the information that I had found earlier today is that Spain is not supporting international conflict. So a unilateral attack from one country to another, Spain is not going to support. Not just that Spain is not going to support America, Spain is not going to support anybody where NATO, all of the culture, the worldwide country come together and decide that we're going to go and attack Iran. That's when the world comes together and attacks. That's when Spain jumps in. The World War III scenario. But an individual country going to attack another individual country, Spain is staying out of it. That's Spain's position. How is that a socialist decision? The economy has nothing to do with neutrality. And then the other countries like Germany, what was the other ones that I was talking about? Uh, I can't remember all of them from the United Nations. All the rest of them that are willing to dive in, they're like, sure, it whoever jumps in. Like if they don't care if America uses their bases, that's going to be a different dynamic. Like Britain said, oh, for sure, the America can use our airspace and America can use our bases. Does that mean that Britain is now non-socialist just because they're willing to allow America to use the bases? No, their 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 ability to to um their ability to agree or disagree to support an attack on Iran. Think about the fact that the countries that are allowing the United States to do what they're doing are countries that are negatively impacted by the resources that are not coming out of the Strait of Hormuz because Iran is choking the strait. So a socialist environment has nothing to do with the oil we get from Iran, from the area that Iran is controlling. We don't get because Iran is controlling it. Well, if America's going to blow them up and release the oil, do I have to be a socialist to allow you to do that? No, I don't. That's why I keep telling you you're confused. You're widely confused. Special shout out to Ghost Machine, Donor Class. I I have not seen that concept before. I'm gonna have to do some digging on a donor class. It's called solidarity with the oppressed against the oppressor in actions and not just words. How would I don't understand. So solidarity with the oppressed. Who's oppressed? Because if we because when you say solidarity from the oppressed, not the oppressor in actions, when you think about how Iran is stopping 20% of oil reserves from being distributed to the world, and the United States is going over there and blowing up Iran so that they can control that exact same 20% of oil. Who is the oppressed and who is the oppressor? The Palestinians, which has nothing to do with America. The Palestinians and the Iranians. So the Palestinians and the Iranians, who are the oppressors, are uh, stopping 20% of oil from attacking everybody. I'm trying to figure out where you're coming from with this. I'm trying to figure out where you're coming from with this. Oh, you're saying that the oppressor is Israel and the United States. Now, what does that have to do with socialism? Uh, and then again, the dynamic is still the same. How does remaining neutral have anything to do with oppressing or or being oppressed? How does I don't want to be involved in this fight have anything to do with oppressed or being oppressed? Because my understanding is that a solidarity with oppressed against the oppressor would mean that people would band together with Iran to fight off the United States. just simply not allowing the United States to park their car in my driveway before they start that driveway. I mean, that drive by has nothing to do with me supporting or not supporting anybody. I don't want you to start your attack from my property where I can be included in your outcome. That is not socialism. That sovereignty, you know, the reputation of Switzerland, where no matter what's going on with the warring parties, when everybody comes here, we're all at peace because we're not fighting nobody. So nobody's fighting us and nobody's fighting here in front of us. That mentality, which is the same mentality that Canada has. And you said Canada's not socialist. So you have to understand how that's not taking a stance against oppression. It's just not being a part of the conflict. He said the US is the biggest enemy of socialism. Okay, that's an opinion. But the United States is not attacking Iran for its social beliefs. The United States attacking Iran for resources. The same way the United States attacked Russia so that Russia could stop attacking Ukraine for the resources in Ukraine. The same way the United States attacked Iraq and Afghanistan and came back with oil. The same way the United States went over there and took over Venezuela and now they control the oil. The same way Donald Trump just declared that he's going to go to Cuba next. He's not conquering these countries for socialism. He's not conquering these countries to put a stop to socialism. He's conquering the country for, I'm guessing, you're going to say capitalism, right? So now you're going to say, well, if you support the war, you support capitalism. No, you don't have to support the war to recognize that they're going to do what they're going to do. He said the U.S. is attacking Iran to stop China from becoming the global leader. What's that got to do with socialism, though? See, now we're talking. So the United States has contracts with China and Japan and other countries in Asia. We've got at least the next 12 months worth of trade agreements together that might continue to go forward in a positive fashion. So we're not directly fighting China, but we are directly going to blow the fuck out of Iran so that China doesn't have control of the oil and resources. So that's like that's like playing chess. China's on the sidelines watching the U.S. versus Iran, and whoever wins, China's going to get the oil from them. But the U.S. is going to go over there and get it first, or at least they're going to try to. But again, that has nothing to do with socialism. That has nothing to do with Spain not wanting to be involved. That's what I was trying to point out earlier. Fiat currency is a form of revolutionary socialism. Okay, but if fiat is also a car, but what does socialism currency have to do with the United States blowing up Iran and Spain not wanting the United States to park their planes on Spain territory before they blow up Iran? Iran is only allowing ships through the Strait of Hormuz if they pay in yuan. China is the global leader of a socialist economy. Uh, Actually, Iran is allowing people to come through the strait if they pay. It is not specifically required for them to pay in yen, but China is the one buying, and China is buying in yen or won. Yen is a stronger denominating currency than won, but that doesn't mean that Spain's debate with the US using their airspace is about socialism. China being a global socialist economy has and actually kind of more of a communist economy than a socialist economy. But you know, you want to claim that they're the second largest economy in the world by stat, and then they are somewhat of a socialist economy. Uh, from that observation, How does that, again, because today we're talking about Spain, US not going to Spain and then directly knocking off Iran. That's kind of what I was going from here. I was just pointing out we already have forms of socialism in the United States. Yes, we do. We do. We have socialism and communism in America. We do. But Nostrum is like completely left field with the topic, trying to make it seem like the Spain U.S. conflict is about socialism and capitalism, which it's not. It's not a autonomy for socialism. It's like, bro, I don't want to get fired from my job because I let a couple U.S. space airships park their planes on my turf. It's not the same thing. The arguments are completely different. Spain is supporting China and Iran and not the US and the others in Europe, a tact support of socialism in the moment of truth. Oh, no, that's not what's happening. So what's going on right now is that Spain is maintaining a neutral standpoint. They're not for or against the war. They're not going to allow, well, no, actually, I stand corrected. They are against a direct assault, as was declared, because it is supposed to be agreed upon by NATO that an attack is supposed to occur. And if not an attack, sanctions are supposed to occur. China is looting ships, or not looting ships, but kind of like black market style dark ships where they turn off their GPS trackers, go over to Iran, pick up a bunch of oil, fly back, turn on their GPS tracker. So they're going against the NATO rules and acquiring oil from Iran. US just figured it out. US is blowing up Iran so that Iran can release control of the strait. Um, but it's not showing support for socialism. It is showing objection to being called on to aid in a global attack against Iran just because the United States is the only one in NATO that wants to do it. So it out of all of the countries in NATO, the US was the only one that said, I want to go over there and blow them up. And no one else in NATO agreed with that, but the US did it anyway. Now, because no one else agreed with that, now you're saying that everyone else is socialist because the US wanted to go and blow up Iran. No, Spain it joined NATO under the conditions that they would not be involved in conflict. That whatever happened would be a world decision, global decision. So all world leaders would agree that this is supposed to happen. Then they would be involved in it. But under the conditions that one country is going to do something to another country, that Spain was not going to be involved in that. Now, that's not supporting China. That's not supporting Iran. That's not rebelling against the United States. That is maintaining a neutral position. Now, the US Spain alliance was a relationship out of convenience because the US parked their planes in Spain and paid Spain almost renting the space. It was a relationship of convenience. It is no longer convenient because Spain can essentially become financially self sustainable, but they're going to lose a massive quantity of income because they've become financially dependent upon the wasteful spending of Americans. So while it will hurt their economy to sever their trade relations with the United States, they can take the stance that we're not going to get into your one on one fight with Iran. That's not a support of socialism. That is saying I don't want to be drug into your bullshit over there. That's what that is. That doesn't. If a Democrat and a Republican is fighting in the street and you don't want that fight to happen on your yard, you don't automatically become a Democrat or a Republican. You just don't want to be involved in the fight. Just deliberately maintaining a neutral position. Other countries that are far more impacted by the oil not coming out of the strait might say, yeah, sure, you can go ahead and park your planes over here because you're going to stop them from costing us more money. So we're not going to get involved, but we're not going to stop you from doing what you're doing. At the end of the day, they're not for or against the battle per se, but they're not going to stop the United States from doing what they're doing because if Europe has to spend more money on fuel and US is going to spend more money on fuel in order to blow up Iran so that they can get the fuel so that Europe can get the fuel cheaper, at the end of the day, it's like the lesser of two evils. Let those two duke it out and whoever Whoever has it at the end, and then we just pay the difference. He says, and you can't be neutral on a moving train because the U.S. would not be happy to not get their way. No, you can be. That's a ridiculous thought process because at the end of the day, um, if you're on a moving train, the train is moving what you want it. You can be neutral on the moving train. I don't give a fuck what happens, where this train goes, and how this train gets to where it's got to get. If it's got to run over 10,000 people, as long as it doesn't derail itself, I'm on the train. I'm not controlling the direction that it goes. You can remain neutral on that. You can leave it up to the conductor whether or not they hit one person or hit 45. As long as the train doesn't capsize and kill me, it is what it is. You can remain neutral on a train. But if you're in an alliance with the United States, where every time you had a beef with somebody else and you called alliance help and say, hey, send troops, I'm under attack, and the US sends troops. And then now when the US says, hey, I want to do a political skirmish, send troops, I don't want to be involved in that. That you can't be neutral on the call for help when reinforcements came on your behalf. That's going to be the argument. You can't say, well, I can always borrow money from you to pay my rent, but then when you need money to pay your rent, I'm not willing to help you. You got to figure it out yourself. I'm going to remain neutral in that situation. So it's not about being on a moving train and being neutral. It's about being in an agreement where we benefit from each other's involvement in this relationship. We're codependent towards one another, and it's only a codependent relationship when it benefits you. But when it benefits me, you don't want to help me out, and that is not a favorable relationship. But all that means is that the relationship is not. It needs to be reconstructed. The relationship was, if I give you money, I can use your place for whatever I want. When that relationship changes and you decide that I can't use your space for whatever I want, I cannot give you money just for the sake of giving you money because I was giving you money to use your space. Now that I'm not using your space anymore, I'm not giving you money anymore. Our financial relationship is dissolved. Now, that has absolutely nothing to do with a American citizen who has no involvement in the decision being on that train, because the train of the United States conquering resources around the world over the next 2 more years that Donald Trump is in office, we're going to be on that train, whether we want to or not. As long as you live in the United States, you're going to be on that train. Now, are you going to protest in the streets and get shot by ISIS so that you can protest the war? That is going to happen whether you go outside or not. Or are you going to mind your own fucking business and go to work every day and take care of your family? You can remain neutral, meaning that it doesn't matter. You could be opinionated. You could be opinionated. You could be completely against the war. You could be completely against the war, but you're not going to block traffic during the 5 o'clock rush hour. You're not going to block the major freeways in California because you're against the war. So, um, that's kind of the misconception that we have, because you believe that somebody has to declare being a capitalist in order to report on global conflict. You've claimed that it's got to be a socialist move. It's not about socialism. It's not about it. It is a capitalist tactic because they're controlling resources and they're going to profit off of those resources. So that's capitalism. But they're not defending socialism by not being a part of the war. They're not because defending requires to fight. They're not fighting. They're just not allowing you to park your shit on their turf. That's what you. So you got to really call a spade, because even the countries, Germany and all the other countries that would allow United States troops to park and camp out and refuel and then head out, they're not in it. But I mean, they're not going to stop it. But it doesn't matter who controls the straits. Somebody is going to charge Germany for oil. Now, is it going to be the United States or is it going to be Iran? because Iran is charging a hefty premium. So if it's cheaper to buy it from the United States, why stop the U.S. from going to get it? He says it's about seeing which way the winds are blowing and whether or not the future is socialism. Well, I mean, we're not going to make it to that idealistic Star Trek environment simply because the United States controls everything. It'll still be even if United States became the unilateral world power, it would still be a model where people are going to be dependent upon taking their ass to work and getting money in order to get stuff. When we start doing a communist model, doesn't matter which country, or if all countries unite under the rainbow currency, and everybody has one unified global currency, and there isn't any inflation costs and anything, which will devalue us all the way down to just trading stuff for stuff. Um, where equal distribution of everything, the true definition of capitalism. We would fall into a Star Trek model where you take your ass to work every day, you put in your time, you go home, you only have what you need. You don't stockpile anything because you don't need to, because you will be given everything that you need on a regular basis. If everybody has a fair share of everything, there's no need for currency because you will get enough clothes to last you to the next time you need clothes. You'll get enough food to last you to the next time you need food, and you will put in enough work in order for you to earn the right to receive. Now, how many hundreds of years will it take for us to get to that level? As long as there is the capabilities for the top 1% in the world to control 99% of resources, everyone else has to scrape, claw, and climb their way to a self sustainable position because the top 1% are not going to release the capital, even distribution to everybody. Because just like I told you, Donald Trump could give every American $1 million out of his $4+ billion, still not be broke, still have generational wealth that his family can't spend in a lifetime responsibly. And then we would not have a poor class because everybody would be a millionaire. However, because the majority of Americans do not know how to save money, do not know how to invest money, and they primarily spend every dollar that they get, they will likely be broke in less than a year. But if everybody got $1 million from Donald Trump, and everybody put that $1 million into a brokerage account, and everybody was getting dividends off of that $1 million, even if it was just 10%, where they would be making 100,000 a year guaranteed every year, where they wouldn't have to work. They still go to work, but they wouldn't have to work. You would likely have a Dubai style society where nobody would be broke. But because everybody is wasteful, even if he did that and everybody had a base standard of living where they had $100,000 a year coming in, you ultimately understand that people would be wasting more money. They would be spending a lot more money, which would trigger inflation. And then the poor class would be millionaires because people are wasteful. And that's just one of two billionaires. Because if Elon Musk did the same thing and gave everybody $1 million, now everybody would have $2 billion. And even at 10%, everybody would get $200,000 a year. It'd be a guaranteed income. You wouldn't have to go to work. You would have money to pay for shit, right? You'd be able to live in California with that kind of money, never have to work a day in your life. Everybody would have that, right? But what do you think would happen? Manual labor jobs would go under because nobody's coming to work. You would have to replace blue collar work with machines because nobody wants to do any work because everybody's got enough money where they don't have to work, right? And then the poor minded individuals make financially stupid decisions. So likely, if everybody was fiscally responsible, the working class economy would crash because nobody would go to work. But everybody being irresponsible, they would likely spend that $1 million in less than a year, be broke as fuck next year, and have a gift tax to pay for next tax season, which they couldn't afford. But yeah, they might have their own house and they might have a Bentley or something like that in the front yard where they would have bought them a $700,000 or $800,000 house cash up front, and they would have bought them an expensive $250 to $500,000 car cash up front, so that they would have a brand new vehicle that they're going to crash inside of 6 months, and they have a brand new house that they have to pay to maintain. But I mean, they if they can't pay the taxes, what do you think is going to happen? The IRS is going to come and seize the car and seize the house for taxes. So now you still ain't got shit. You back to square one. So in the battle for oil and the reserves thereof, how is the future socialism or not? Because if the average individual is financially irresponsible, right? That's what I'm trying to get you to understand. And I mean it took a while for us to get there, but I mean, yeah. Um the single most important factors that we have is powerful and deeply ingrained in some anti-war sentiments among the Spanish populace. And the memory of the 2003 Iraq War remains a defining political event, not a socialist one. So the images of millions marching and the subsequent electoral punishment of the government that ignored them created a powerful lesson. And that's what I was trying to explain to you. Aligning with American military adventures against popular will is political suicide. So you're not supposed to go against the majority. That's not socialism, right? So when Sanchez declares uh, no a la Garura, he's speaking directly to his voters that he's not taking them to war. He would know that standing up to the United States would be immensely popular at home, and it would be. Opinion polls in this scenario would likely show a surge in approval for Sanchez to maintain his position in office and his government. Now, the opposition and their parties would be left in a difficult position, as criticizing Sanchez would mean appearing to side with a new war in the Middle East. Deputy Prime Minister uh, Marari Jesus Monteiro might state plainly, Spain's sovereignty is not for sale. Now, this domestic political victory would allow Sanchez to frame the conflict in a way that is highly favorable to him, and he'd no longer be just a prime minister, he'd be a statesman on the world stage, defending peace against unilateralism. And going against unilateralism is not supporting socialism. It is not going against capitalism. It is going against unilateralism. And that's why I had to teach you. He would become the face of resistance in a position that would resonate not just in Spain, but across Europe. Geography is destiny. So, to grasp the magnitude of Spain's historical decision, you must look at a map. The Iberian Peninsula sits at one of the most critical crossroads on the planet, controlling the Strait of Gibraltar, the only gateway between the Atlantic and the Mediterranean. The naval station at Rota is the crown jewel of the U.S. Navy in Europe. Further inland, uh, Moron Air Base is a key staging post for the United States Air Force. Their denial is not a mere inconvenience, it is a strategic amputation. But strategy exists in a world of economic realities. Now, a full blown trade war, as threatened by a Donald Trump in the White House, would be devastating. The United States is one of Spain's largest trading partners, and billions of dollars in goods flows across the Atlantic. A trade cutoff would cripple key sectors of the Spanish economy. That's what we were getting to today. And yet, In the midst of this standoff, a fascinating counter narrative could unfold because while their governments are at uh, loggerheads, American citizens might flock to Spain in record numbers because a conflict in the Middle East could make the entire Gulf region a no go zone for tourism. Travelers would scramble for alternatives, and Spain, with its sunny climate and rich culture, could become a prime beneficiary. Now, this would create a surreal disconnect because the president of the United States would be threatening to economically sever ties with the nation that his own citizens are choosing as their number one vacation destination. And it's a powerful reminder that in our globalized world, the currents of culture and commerce often flow in different directions from the tides of politics, which Nordstrom could not understand for the last hour and a half out of our 2.5 hour show. So, with headlines dominated by talks of diplomatic uh, ruptures, a practical question arises. Would it still be safe to travel to Spain? Now, the short answer is surprisingly yes. The first thing to understand is the official US State Department travel advisory. Despite the heated rhetoric, the travel advisory for Spain would likely remain at a current level 2 out of 4, exercising increased caution. Now, this is not due to the diplomatic spat, but pre existing concerns with that are common for many Western European countries and the threats of tourism and the potential for civil unrest. The advisory warns that terrorist groups may conduct acts with little warning and that demonstrations are common features of life in major Spanish cities. The advice is simple: avoid large crowds and follow the instructions of the local police. So, what should you do when you're traveling? The recommendations are straightforward. First, you want to enroll in the Smart Traveler Enrollment Program. Step: this is a free service, registers your trips with the nearest US embassy. Second, continue to monitor State Department websites for updates. Third, exercise common sense precaution. It's vital to note that commercial air travel would be completely unaffected. The airspace closure causing so much friction would apply exclusively to military aircraft. So your flight from New York to Barcelona would operate as scheduled. Spain's airports, trains, and hotels would be open and, as we noted, likely busier than ever. The diplomatic battle is being fought in the corridors of power, but on the streets of uh, Seville and the beaches of Malacca, life and tourism would carry on unaffected. So, what this scenario illustrates is more than just a hypothetical disagreement between friends, it's a tectonic shift, a moment where a sovereign nation could deliberately uncouple itself from the American security apparatus, which, again, being a sovereign nation, is not supporting socialism. It is being non supportive to conflict that does not involve them. Spain's dramatic refusal would be a move born from its own unique history, the deep political scars of the Iraq War and the anti war sentiment of its people. It would be a calculated decision, one that could prove immensely popular at home, even as it infuriates its powerful allies, pissing off everybody. In response, the fury from the White House would be swift, threatening an economic war. This, in turn, could force a divided Europe to find a measure of unity. The result is a complex, multi layered crisis for the Pentagon and for NATO. So the Pentagon and NATO will both have to reassess their situation. And this is also going to be a conflict and crisis for the authority of the United States. So where does this leave us? The path forward is such a scenario that splits into several possibilities. One is further escalation, triggering a bitter trade war between the United States and the European Union. A second, more likely path is a tense de-escalation where the United States quietly backs away from its most severe threats, but the relationship is permanently scarred. The trust would be gone. A third possibility is that this becomes the new uncomfortable status quo. The US military adopts the threats and adapts to the Spain uh, threats as a strategic black hole. The rift remains a permanent symbol of diminished American influence and a catalyst for Europeans' push for a strategic autonomy. Spain's act of defiance would be seen in hindsight as the moment Europe began to seriously build a security identity independent of Washington. We're at an infectious point, and a lot of people are going to be really debating this from a completely different perspective. But the old certainties of the post Cold War era, where American leadership was taken for granted, are crumbling in real time right now. And this thought experiment shows how one nation's act of defiance could speak to a larger truth. And the world is becoming more multipolar, and even long standing allies are increasingly willing to chart their own courses. So the future of Western alliances is no longer a given, it is a question mark. So, what do you think would happen in this scenario? Would US and Spain reconcile, or would this be the beginning of a permanent break? Let us know your analysis in the comments. I read all of them. And as always, we provide you with uniformed information that was curated from extensive research. And I like to break it down and try to make it make sense for you. After 3 hours of discussion, we've come to find that this directly hits your wallets and directly changes the way you decide to do things. So it is up to you to choose, where do you want to put your money? Now, with that being said, we're going to wrap things up and start by saying, ladies, as long as the situation doesn't make sense, I'm going to keep asking you, ladies, to make it make sense. So, ladies, please make it make sense. Fellas, I give you all this information to help you guys become higher value men. So, if you can pay attention to the things that are inside of your control that you don't like, you can proactively put forth change to improve those things. And then you would have the capability to navigate around the things that are outside of your control, as I've discussed for the last 2 hours and 45 minutes. Ladies, while this is a male driven podcast from the male's perspective, you too can come in and communicate and learn from the information where you can become higher value women. Simply paying attention to how you're going to build your 20 and 30-year goals, and then reverse engineer that to what actions and steps you can perform today, and then stick to your goals. If you keep your eyes and ears open for the characteristics, personality, drives, and ambitions of the suitors that are approaching you, you can find a potential partner that can aid you in successfully achieving those goals in a more efficient and meaningful fashion. It is quite easier for two people to make it to a million than it is for one. But you have to prioritize how you're going to benefit from your performance as well as theirs. Now, that was a pretty stretched discussion. I thought we were only going to be here for an hour and a half, two at the most. So I really appreciate, special shout out to Michael for chiming in early on in the show. I want to thank you guys for coming to this and that. I'm your host, Xander, where we talk about this, that, and everything in between. And I will see you guys tomorrow.
Higher ground. Used to chase validation, now I validate myself. Building inner strength, putting doubt upon the shelf. No more unnecessary drama, no more wasted time. Climbing higher, constantly making my own climb. Standing on higher ground where excellence is found. My potential knows no bounds, raising the bar, breaking ground. My network is my net worth. Choose your company wise. Surround yourself with eagles, not with sheep in disguise. Every interaction is a reflection of my brand. Quality over quantity, that's my personal command.